All right, it is 6:15 p.m. and I'd like to call this work session to order. Instructions on how to participate virtually are included in the City Council calendar item listed on the front page of missionks.org. Tonight, we will be discussing the Safe Streets for All project. Ms. Boyce, would you please introduce the consultants and begin tonight's presentation?
Sure. Just to give a little bit of background, I think you are all aware, but in 2023, the City of Mission applied for a federal Safe Streets and Roads for All planning grant with support from KDOT. This program is designed to reduce traffic-related fatalities and serious injuries for all road users, including pedestrians, cyclists, transit riders, and drivers alike. Through the grant, the city is developing a transportation safety action plan, which builds on the priorities outlined in our comprehensive plan and formally commits mission to a goal of eliminating serious injuries and traffic fatalities. Once completed, the TSAP will help us pursue future implementation funding for safety improvements. The city was awarded $200,000 planning grant, including federal, state, and local contributions, and finalized the agreement with the Federal Highway Administration in December of 2024. After a competitive process, Burns and McDonnell was selected in March of 2025 to lead this effort. And since April, the team's been working on the project, and tonight they're here to share an overview of the Safe Streets and Roads for All, findings from the safety analysis, progress on public engagement, a preview of safety toolbox and a project list, policy considerations and next steps. And so with us tonight, I'll introduce the team from Burns and McDonnell. It's Howard Loveliner, Drew Matrician, did I say it right? Maggie Green, and Jessica Hutton. And I'm gonna let Howard go ahead and start presentation.
All right. Thank you, Stephanie, and thanks to the council for this opportunity to give you an update on our progress on the study so far. We'll go to the next slide. For those of you who aren't very familiar with Burns & McDonnell, safety is an important part of our culture. We start all of our meetings with a safety moment. And so we do have a safety moment as part of this presentation on the next slide. I'm sure all of you, if you're anything like me on my way here today, experience construction on a day-to-day basis now in the summer. That is a huge part of what we do in the public workspace to make our roads safer. But it is really important to think about all the folks that we have, our fellow colleagues, your employees and some of your citizens in those work zones on a daily basis and the challenges that they encounter. 1/2 of all work zone fatalities in transportation projects come from folks who are hit by vehicles. So it is a tremendous part of our industry and something to think about. As you are driving through a construction zone, make sure that you stay focused. It is incredibly important. Construction zones are very dynamic, so making sure your phone's down and your eyes are on the road. And then give plenty of space to the people in front of you. Rear end crashes are a huge issue in work zones, are a major part of the crashes and fatalities that we have. So just think about that next time you're in a work zone. Next, in terms of our agenda, these are the pieces that we plan to talk about today. I think Stephanie did a good job of just setting the table for the different topics that we're going to cover. One of the things I would highlight is this study is really equal parts data analysis, which we'll be providing a big perspective on, and then also public feedback. So the safety experience is certainly the crashes that you experience in your community and all those that have been documented, but the lived experience of your citizens as they come through your community, visitors to your community, how they perceive safety is also very important. And so that is certainly part of the data collecting process that we do. And it is a huge part of what does ultimately influence our results. And I will say, today being a working session, we came today prepared to work. We have some questions for you to just sort of prompt and get feedback from the council. We are here to answer any questions you have at any point in the presentation. Just, stop us, flag us, and we are happy to answer that. Next slide. Why are we here today? So these are the outcomes that we hope in terms of, having this dialogue with you today, presenting an update on why we're here. I will say one of the biggest and underlying parts of this is your grant agreement with the federal government says when we are done with our report that your elected body will accept the report. You will publish the report on your website to be, to meet the conditions of your grant. We want that to happen. We want it to be successful. And we know as elected officials that you don't want any surprises when we get done with the report to find out what's in it and what our process was. And so, we think this is an an important process and a point in which we've done enough data and collection to inform you about what's going on. We do have enough time ahead of us yet to tack and influence both the decisions and some of our process if you do have some important feedback. But certainly if there are things that you hear today, either in terms of our results or our process, that are inconsistent with your expectations, now is a great time for us to know, so we don't have to cross that bridge at the very end of the project. That's no fun. No one likes that. So we'll try to avoid that. So with that, we have our first discussion question. Maggie Green is taking notes diligently on all the feedback you have. So we were curious, what transportation concerns are you hearing from your constituency about what's going on in the city? So these can be discrete locations. These can be sort of systemic sort of things. Like when you hear from your citizens about safety issues in the city, what sort of things come across your plate?
I think we hear a lot about speeds and roads that favor automobile users as opposed to other users.
Okay.
Sort of getting from point A to point B fastest as opposed to other considerations and road design and things like that.
Okay. So that is elements of the roadway that allow for all modes to be considered, and then also just how folks are making their way through the city. So
Yeah.
okay, cool.
Yeah, Wanda?
I guess that I'm a daily walker,
Sure.
and to me, they don't respect the crosswalks
Mhm.
for walkers when they're crossing the street. You often are having to kind of make sure they don't kill you.
Hmm. So do you perceive that to be like an awareness issue? They don't see you, or a compliance issue? They just,
They don't care.
okay. Well, that's great.
I think I've heard from one or two people maybe also that the crosswalks are just kind of not in a predictable place or not
Okay.
very visible or something to drivers.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
we don't actually know why it's happening, but like, that's a
You're-
concern that I've heard.
Yeah, perfect. I appreciate you're not surveying the people after they almost run you over about why they did, but yeah, so driver expectation, just are the facilities, yeah, intuitive. That's great.
Yeah. Debbie?
One of the things I've noticed recently, and it's just this summer, and it could be because of the rain and everything, is a lot of the signage is overhung by leaves and trees and limbs, and you can't, I don't know what our legal requirement would be if you didn't do what it said because you can't see a sign.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, no, great. Just keeping up maintenance. Good.
And in Ward 4, which is the south part of the city, I often talk to folks that maybe don't either have a hard time getting across Shawnee Mission Parkway or just lament the fact that they wouldn't even try.
Oh, sure.
There's not great options except for few and far between, and even then they're large crossings and long timings.
Yeah, I think you see that reflected on the heat map too. of
Yeah.
Those problem spots across Shawnee Mission Parkway.
Sure.
And then, yeah, I know a lot of this was, it might be more focused on arterials, but we have an incomplete sidewalk network too. And so just alternative modes to being on the roadway.
My concern is that even with the flashing lights, you still have to watch, even though you know that they're supposed to stop, they don't, even with the flashing when you hit it. So I do think it has to do with compliance.
Okay, perfect.
There's no way they can't see a flashing light.
No, and I will say this maybe to the mayor's comment, that the nice thing about this study is it is not necessarily a car-focused study. That can be if that is the choice a community chooses to go down, but the grant is available to talk about and consider all different modes. And I think you'll see throughout both our data analysis and the engagement that we've been doing, we've been certainly capturing feedback from everybody on all the different modes.
Yeah, on that front, I think I'm a cyclist and I talk to cyclists pretty frequently that would like to be able to use Johnson Drive more readily. I think to some degree there's some intentional design around using the trails and Martway instead, but I see people go on Johnson Drive anyway. Clearly the demand is there, right? People are
Sure.
going to try it, and in general they'd prefer it to be more accessible to bicycles.
Good.
Is what I hear.
Well, we are certainly a cycle-friendly consultant team here, so there's a bunch of cycle. Good. Well, cool. Well, we will go on again, start showing you some content, and if that is consistent with what you all are expecting, that's great. And if you see anything that raises concern, let me know. So on the next slide, this is the fundamental components of a safety SS4A action plan. It is a unique grant opportunity because it is direct from the federal government to municipalities like yourself. And then it is shocking in terms of, I don't know if you get involved with a lot of other federal grants, but it has very few directives from the federal government. So frankly, other than fundamentally providing the components that are on this list, and there's like maybe a paragraph or two that goes with each one, the federal government is very open-ended about how you as a community choose to focus your studies. So it does grant a lot of opportunity there. Yeah, please.
I had a question because I know some of the programs are being revised by this administration. Is that one thing that your plan will keep an eye on is because, you know, our original thought is that we would circle back for implementation dollars. So having a plan that will be, you know, responsive to where there could be changes in the program as well. Because I know right now it is really open, but if there are any sort of, you know, flashing red signals on any of the pieces, you know, I think knowing about that as the plan is developed will be helpful too.
Sure. So thankfully, our team actually does several of these, a fair amount of these. So we are keeping an eye on the federal administration changes. We have adapted our scope. Actually, since you applied for the grant, the changes have come to the program slightly around the fringes, nothing in the core of this program. Certainly, the federal government has signaled some of their prioritization in terms of where they want their federal funds to go in terms of implementation. So it is a good point that one part of completing this safety action plan will, it then allows you to tap into the implementation funds that are available through the same SS4A program. But one thing that we do try to focus on in our plan is just having one pool to pull from is not super helpful. So especially on the Kansas side, there are several different pots of money available for doing safety analysis. So we will identify those projects that are well suited to federal grant opportunities, but also those that may be state funded opportunities or other opportunities to help get safety assistance. Cool. On our next slide. So this is our schedule. As Stephanie mentioned, we did get this kicked off in April, and you can see here that we are going through December. So it is our goal to get things done in a fairly quick pace. One, we just like to do that because as things change in the city, you know, it's hard if you stretch that over 18 months or longer. Things can be very dynamic and hard to pin down in a single study. So we like to be consistent, and then also it keeps the different groups that we're reaching out to engaged throughout to know that, you know, their feedback is going to be considered in real time and ultimately incorporated into the study. So I would back to help close this out here, but I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Jessica Hutton, who is our safety analysis lead on the team, and she's going to talk us through some of the initial results.
Hi, thank you. Okay, so we're going to jump into just a little bit of the safety analysis. I'll try to keep it high level, but feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions. We'll talk a little bit about the where, when, what, you know, who's involved in the crashes. And I'll bring up the KDOT Vulnerable User Dashboard, which is a tool that's something helpful for us to reference. And then we'll do a little question at the end of this section as well, just for your feedback. So we'll start with this slide on how does Mission compare to several other communities in the area. So we were looking at fatalities and then fatality rate. Fatalities in Mission are, this is over a 10-year period. There were 9 fatalities. When you look at that to your population, we're at a 9.4. That's, you know, higher than many of the other communities in the area. But then when we kind of take a step back and look at, okay, how many of those are happening on the freeway sections, and we take those out, your number comes down quite a bit, right? And so you're towards the bottom of your surrounding community. So that means on your local network, you're doing pretty well. And we certainly saw that as we were looking at the crash history, that there weren't, you know, a ton of crashes, certainly not a bunch happening in singular areas where we could say, okay, fix this spot and fix that spot. So that leads us to looking at more sort of systemic, policy-based, risk-based improvements as we go. Okay, on the next slide, trends over time. So we have seen a decrease in overall crashes, especially since COVID, and that might be tied a little bit to reduced vehicle travel. But given that that was sustained all the way through 2023, that's a good sign. What we do see, though, is that those serious injury crashes have stayed fairly consistent. So while overall crashes are coming down, we've still got those few serious injury crashes happening year over year that we need to try to address. Okay, this is what I call a donut chart. So it's like a pie graph, but we've got two layers to it. So the outer circle represents total crashes. We're looking at 686 crashes that involved more than one vehicle. And the inner circle are just those fatal, serious, and minor injury crashes. So where someone's life was impacted by the crash. And we can see that there's different patterns in what kind of crashes we're seeing there. So when you look at all crashes, rear ends jump out as a primary contributor, but those tend to be less severe, less likely to result in injuries. So when we look specifically at injuries, it's those angle crashes that are typically happening at intersections. So those are some areas where we've got, folks running into each other, T-bone crashes, that kind of thing, where tend to be a focus area in municipalities. And the next slide. Okay, so this is fixed object crashes, which it means you hit something that's not another vehicle. And that makes up most of the single vehicle crashes in the data set. There are fewer in this group of crashes. So we only had 93 of those. The inner circle only represents 14. So each of those little 7% pie slices is really just one crash on the inner circle. But again, we see that trees are just a tiny percentage of the total crashes, but they make up half of those injury crashes. And so we just kind of try to get a look at these kinds of things. What are people running into? Are there changes that we can make to the roadside design to reduce the frequency or the likelihood of that happening? Okay. This slide shows what police officers mark as contributing circumstances when they fill out their crash report after a crash has happened. This is not everything. It's not comprehensive, but they're some of the main ones we look for. I know we just talked about how speeding is a bit of a concern, but honestly, at least in terms of how the officers are reporting crashes, the speed contribution is pretty low for your crashes overall, but that inattention is pretty high. And we see inattention in a lot of places, the prevalence of cell phones and things like that. It can also be a catch-all category, so it's a little bit hard to act on. But what I did want to point out is really that that speeding number is lower than we see in a lot of communities. So there may just be some targeted routes where we want to address speed, but it may not be, an overall major issue that we need to focus on. This heat map just kind of shows where crashes are happening in the community. This is a 5-year look, and the bubbles are sort of weighted by the severity of the crash. So, where a fatality or a serious injury has happened is going to show up darker red than where, a non-injury crash has happened. But I'm from what I've heard so far from our interaction with Stephanie and others is that this is not a surprising map, that many of you might have been able to draw this just from your own assumptions. So, we've got Metcalf and we've got Johnson Drive and Shawnee Mission, and of course, those are the routes where you have the most traffic, right? So there's just the most opportunity for crash there. But that doesn't mean that some of these other light yellow areas aren't areas that we need to give an extra look to. Okay, and then just to kind of get back to that vulnerable road user discussion, we want to keep them front of mind when we're doing this work. Luckily, in the past 5 years, we haven't seen a lot of ped and bike crashes. The numbers are pretty low, and we haven't seen any fatalities. So that's very good. But, we would be concerned if we saw some just because of the size of the community, right? We don't have that many compared to other cities, that many people to be in that risk situation. But we looked at KDOT's Vulnerable Road User Safety Assessment Tool. So this is a publicly available website that KDOT has. They had a consultant come in and assess risk factors, not just crash history, risk factors across the network, across the whole state, and identify priority areas for making improvements for ped and bike safety. And we certainly see that there's some segments here in the city that have been flagged there, so we want to pay some special attention to that. But also if there are other areas that aren't showing up on this that you say, certainly focus on ped and bike on this route, let us know about that. So that's my very quick high-level summary of crash data. I'll pause and see if there's any specific questions on any of these slides.
I had a question that maybe is for you or maybe for someone else on the team, but how does sort of a avoidance, not, I wouldn't say data, but like anecdotes get factored in? So you might hear a lot from people that like, well, the reason why there's no pedestrian crashes there is because no one would be,
Yeah.
out of their mind enough to walk there in the
Yes.
first place. And so, we hear that about areas where people would like to be more walkable because they just feel unsafe. And so they're avoiding them in the
Yeah.
outset.
That is very valid and something we're aware of. And that's why I think our team is so focused on sort of integrating the community feedback with the
Okay.
data analysis.
that
So
piece.
I think Drew is going to talk a little bit more about that when he comes up here, but we have ways for people to like put a point on a map and say, I'm scared here, or I
Okay.
don't go here, or whatever. Okay, so these are just kind of our discussion questions. I'm gonna just lay them all out at once so you can answer any of them, but is there anything that we presented that was surprising to you? Is there anything that we didn't report on that you're like, I really want to dig into the data and understand the answer to this? And then what did the data not say that we should consider important to carry forward in the study?
Debbie?
On your crash data, the different things backed into head-on, those categories. Is there any way of knowing geographically where those took place?
Yep, 100%. So we have the crash data from KDOT, which we've worked with for years and years. So we know that data really well, and we can plot any of those crash types on a map. So if you say, I want to know where the rear end crashes are happening, we can make a map of just those crashes. So happy to do that. If there's any specific thing you want to see, we can put that together.
Yeah, Brian, the Ben?
I noticed that the second largest contributor behind inattention was aggression, which is frankly consistent with my experience on the mark. How do we correct for something like that?
That's a good question. I mean, I think like there are some things that we can do through roadway design. If the roads are too wide, then sometimes people like try to pass you when there's not really enough space to pass. So we can sort of bring things in either visually or physically to minimize that. Sometimes we see poor signal timing gets people, if they're having too much delay at signals, and they start to get aggressive about things or try to cheat the signal. So we can try to smooth things out with low cost treatments like that. Sometimes it's just, you can do sort of social norming behavioral type strategies where you make a big push on messaging through, social media and things like that. It is hard. We try to approach it from what we call the safe system approach, which is behavioral and roadway design and speeds and all that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, Ben?
Yeah, just the first question that came to mind was what do we consider freeway here? Is it anything outside of the interstate? Is it parts of Metcalf? What is freeway?
Freeway was the interstate in
Okay.
this instance. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I see a lot along Metcalf, and I know part of that is sort of freeway-like, so just curious. what-
Yeah, it does kind of go back and forth.
And then, yeah, I think in terms of sort of the contributing factors or circumstances, I am kind of interested to know, I think it's easy to sort of, for the roadway design and the right-of-way design to sort of hide behind some of these numbers, and I'm hoping we can dig into that a little more as well. I think inattention probably lumps in a lot of different things that
Yeah.
could be, a number of different factors.
And one of our goals is to create a system where the roadway communicates to drivers what's expected of them and then puts constraints in to try to keep them from doing the things we don't want them to do. And of course, there's no way to do that perfectly. You do rely on people to want to be compliant with the rules, but we can certainly nudge them through design.
Yeah, I think in my experience, that tends to be the contributing factor behind some of the neighborhood speeding and the crosswalk issues. Is it just you're driving and it doesn't seem like you should have to slow down or to stop, so people don't. And when you're on autopilot, that's the problem. So
Yeah.
Yeah, Leah, then Debbie?
Did anything surprise you?
I was a little surprised to see how low the prevalence of speed. So that speeding condition includes both exceeding the posted speed limit and traveling too fast for conditions. And that doesn't mean that the officer always marks it if someone was speeding. It just means that they think the speed contributed to the crash. And I see that reported much more highly in other places where we've done this work. So that kind of surprised me a little bit. I was surprised to not see a few more pet and bike crashes, honestly, just because I know it's a pretty active community with good amenities for people to be able to walk around to different places. So it sounds like our pets are being really safe, maybe more than our drivers are being, that they're looking out for themselves. But yeah, those were both kind of surprising things to me.
Is, we had done the road diet, taking Johnson Drive down to
Mhm.
mostly 2 lanes with the turn lanes. But Johnson Drive isn't that way all the way.
Mhm.
Could you tell by looking at data whether that had made a difference in terms of safety?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I didn't consider that, but we could go in, if we knew sort of the transition date, which I know we can get. I can certainly look at that and provide some feedback on what we see in terms of crashes before and after in one segment compared to the other.
It's funny because they had done it and then undid it.
Right.
And it's similar because it is going right through their, main business area. So
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
that would be helpful too.
Yeah, we could certainly look at that. Yep, that's a good idea.
I know that we're considering maybe doing that with Martway in part. So it would just kind of be nice to know the fruits of the labor.
Yeah.
Because I see it kind of both ways. In some ways, it does yes, it does slow down traffic, but it also makes it almost impossible to turn left
Yeah.
during certain parts of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. Kansas City has, and I live in Kansas City, has gone all in on road diets. And so we've seen a ton of those pop up recently around where I live too. So we might be able to pull in a few more comparison sites and just kind of do a quick and dirty. I have a research background, so I love doing that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So we might be able to pull something out and just see some overall trends. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just nice to know whether that is having the results that we, desired,
Yep.
or if it's contributing to the rage.
It warms my heart to even hear you ask that question, because I don't think enough people look back and assess, if their investments did what they wanted them to do.
Debbie, yeah. Oh, we'll go. Josh, if you want to, I want you to have the microphone though, if you have a question. So can you come up real quick? I want to state your name and city.
Hello, Josh Thiede. I live in Mission, Kansas. Question number 3 drew my attention. But first of all, thank you for doing this and having a Safe Streets for All program and mission. I'm a huge advocate for pedestrian safety. So just very excited this is happening. Thank you for council, mayor, staff, and consultants for taking this seriously. I really appreciate it. What's missing in this data, I live very close to the intersection of 60th and Row. And that is where it turns into Fairway on the other side of the street. Most of the T-bone crashes tend to roll downhill into Fairway and the Fairway officers respond. I'm wondering if that's captured in our data or if that's a miss, because it's not only at that spot, but we have so many other jurisdictions around us. Would want to make sure we're capturing even things that are maybe even half a block outside the city, because there was a vehicle into a house that started in Mission and ended up in Fairway.
That's a good point about those border intersections, because we have a lot of them. Yeah.
And then the second thing is anecdotes and near misses aren't necessarily captured in this data. And I think some of them might be captured by the pinpoints, but I don't think everybody's harrowing pedestrian story and near miss is included in even the social pinpoints. So would want to make sure those things are considered and figure out how we can document the near misses and even more scary intersections beyond the current public input. Thank you.
Yeah, and I guess kind of related to that point and related to the data that we do have, and it might be out of scope for this project, but I don't know if there are better forms that police could be using to record things like near miss, or to get more specificity on, causes like that inattention bucket being so big, if there are recommended improvements in that direction to get better data, going forward too.
Sure, and we can work, we do have folks who are working at the statewide level on safety improvements too. A lot of that stuff is sort of top down. And, you know, I'm sure police reporting forms are already quite onerous for the police. And so, you know, trying to capture all those pieces, but it's good. And so I would say, you know, we did try to look at the crashes in terms of their true geography and not just if it was reported in Mission or Fairway. And so we do understand that a lot of your major roads are roads that you partner with, you know, some of your neighbors. And so, you know, we did try to do a good job of including that stuff in the analysis that you
Great.
saw. So I'm anxious to bring Drew up. I think a lot of the questions you all have in terms of how we're engaging the public and how the public has a chance to voice their opinion, Drew will cover, and then yeah, we can answer some more questions then too.
Perfect.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. Going to run through just engagement real quick. If you can go back a slide, actually. First off, we made a nice little logo here incorporating your own city branding. So hopefully this is recognizable for you all and engaging for your residents. So want to start with just engagement goals. Really, I would characterize them as these three goals: providing information to your residents about the project and you all. We set a goal of meaningfully engaging 200 community members. You'll see through this presentation, I think we're well on our way towards reaching that. And then ultimately, I think Howard alluded to this earlier, but we want to generate support for eventual adoption of the plan and something that you guys are excited about and implementing. So those are the goals. To start off, how we are knocking out achieving those goals, we set up a technical advisory group. You'll see it's multi-department. And actually, Mayor, to one of your questions, I believe one of the ways you can address aggressive driving is through enforcement. And I think that's one of the reasons we wanted the police department to be included in this discussion. There's also just different tidbits that each department can pull out of this information. We had a really good, robust discussion with this group about some of the same questions that you have answered tonight. The social pinpoint map is live. I would invite you all to pull that up, take a look. You will definitely see the goal is to marry the community input with the actual crash data. And you'll see the heat map for where the crashes are. I think that there's a little more color in the social pinpoint map. So where folks are actually going in, telling us a number of categories: flooding issues, bicycle issues, pedestrian issues, suggestions for improvement, not just, you know, reacting to issues, but ways we can improve. So there's about 127 pins as of last Thursday when we turned the presentation in. I think that number is a little bit higher today. We continue to have submissions rolling in. And then this marries up really well. So this is available on missionks.org/safe streets. Also on that webpage, folks can look at the community survey, which is the next slide, I believe. We're up to about 71 total responses as of today, and really just trying to get an additional, not just where are the issues happening, but how do you feel about safety in the community? How do you feel about Mission compared to some of the neighboring communities? We're trying to capture some demographic data so we can see, are folks responding to the survey who are residents of Mission, or are they coming in for work? So trying to understand how folks are interacting with the system. But really it's about, you know, mode frequency, safety perceptions, and really how do we marry that with the crash data? I will pass out in a second some of the promotional materials available, but we've been using these really to just get out in the community. We'll have a slide about our pop-ups, but Director Boyce participated in the first one. We've had really good engagement with folks. We've got business cards and handouts, and I think digital versions of all of these materials that you all should definitely feel free to send out to folks who you know are interested in this topic. Post it on your social media channels. We want to drive traffic to this project right now. And tomorrow we will have a crew at Mission Market. This will be our third pop-up event. And in the first one and the second one combined, we talked to about 70 people. So really that's driving some of the traffic to the website. So folks should stop by the community table tomorrow at Mission Market. Yes, please.
Back and I went into the website to look at, and it's got the legend because it's not on here. So my question is, what is considered safety issue? You've got all these red dots with safety. What safety issue in what context?
I think safety issue, if I was taking the social pinpoint, I would say that's more of a vehicle safety issue. I think if you pulled up and made a comment, you would be able to say, is my issue a pedestrian issue? Is it a bicycle issue? Or is it more of just a general safety issue where I'm driving down the road? We don't have a vehicle issue. So I would,
All of those collectively equal safety.
Right.
Thereof. So you might do clarification on what safety issue is.
so good comment. Yeah.
Yeah, Leah?
Could we add something about the Mission Magazine?
I
Timing.
think that unfortunately, based on our production schedule, they're going to be through that engagement process probably in their schedule to do that. But we can certainly, we've been doing social media updates pretty frequently, and we can certainly do that as we get kind of right up against the.
Been in the Mission Monthly too,
Yeah.
I think.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
right, Yeah.
And have we looked into some non-internet communication for this? Because we do have quite a few residents who are not internet.
Yeah, the main way is the pop-up events, just helping people interact with those digital tools. We don't have paper surveys. We certainly could consider using paper surveys. In our previous Safe Streets for All projects, people have not really engaged with paper.
Yeah.
To the point where it's cost effective, I would say. So we're trying to drive people to those digital tools. But I think we're trying to make it easy when they interact with us in person to pull that up, help folks get online, get logged in. We're trying to make the questions simple so that you don't have to create an account and log into a whole thing. Just tell us your name and some very basic demographic information.
And I don't know how hard it would be to add other pop-up type things, but to that point, maybe, because I know it doesn't look like we have any of these groups in our stakeholder, but our senior facilities are doing some sort of targeted outreach there might be a good addition to capture some of those folks who might not be, going and using the
Yeah.
web pinpoint tool and everything. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, Wanda.
I guess that is my concern too, that 76, 70, 71, when the last one's probably me, but because I read this and decided I was going to do it. But my concern is that isn't a very big number. And I agree that we could try, the Sylvester Powell seems to have a lot of people going through there. I was wondering if maybe you could
Just have a table. Yeah.
not a table, but even just some kind of, not some handout information, but maybe a sign so people know, something that's going to grab their attention that lets them know, because I think that people would fill this out if they knew about it. And I'm not sure that they're getting that information.
Sure.
Who knows, maybe Hy-Vee, that gets a lot of people. Where else?
Mhm.
I don't have any more suggestions.
Well, and I haven't had a chance to stop by the pop-up booths yet, but I don't know if there's any physical version for people to mark on. Cause I know like when we did our bike ped study, we had an open house at the community center where there were actual like physical boards that mirrored some of that online engagement that people could do, the on paper version.
Yeah, we are going to have a community open house in October.
It would have that.
That we could
Okay.
incorporate, I think, more community feedback for those, I would say, hard
Okay. Yeah,
responses.
great.
I guess with that, if you don't get this money, I mean, even just a little blurb mailed to just randomly select people, because I think you need more information. I mean, more recipients or participants in the survey. The second thing is that, have you considered maybe a focus group with people that you need to hear from?
Yeah. I think if we continue to the next slide, so.
Ben, did you have a question?
Oh, yeah,
before we
just a
jump to
quick
that one?
follow-up on the sort of put it in your face a little more. I think when we did the Rock Creek Trail study, there were some signs along that trail. It was sort of hard to be a user of that and not know this study was going on. I don't think we can effectively carpet Mission in signage here, but maybe key intersections and routes and high pedestrian areas. I don't necessarily want high automotive traffic areas full of like extra signs and QR codes, but things where we think people might be ready to snap a QR code or something. Might be a cheap and quick way to do it instead of trying to mail postcards out and get them
Yeah.
back and all that stuff.
Well,
Which,
Maybe our store.
yeah, there you go.
There by that urban coffee and the. traffic areas. The breweries would be.
Well, let us go back, see what options we have for getting more kind of on the ground signage out there and participation. I appreciate those ideas. We mark those down. I think the goal would be to complete the digital tools by the end of August. So basically have the whole month of August to really push out this information more.
Great.
I'm glad to see that you've included the mission project. They'll have lots of feedback for you.
Good.
They do a lot of walking and they're not
Yeah.
afraid to let you know where they feel safe and where they don't feel safe.
Good.
Yeah, we had really good input on our Rock Creek Trail project from that group.
Yep. So you all already see August 14th, we're going to have a stakeholder roundtable. These are the participants. Hopefully try to get a more of a focus group type discussion. Actually hearing how people, hopefully representing different demographic groups, interact with the system and add additional complementary data on top of the crash data, on top of the general public data to sort of pull out those key acute safety issues that people are observing. Next slide. So I will hand it back to Howard for our toolbox discussion.
All right. Thanks, Drew. So in terms of how is all of this going to come together in a useful way for your community? So we've talked about already the crash analysis. So we want to make sure we're making data informed decisions. We talked about the community stakeholder piece. And the last major part of this is the toolbox. And so what we have found throughout our implementation of this is communities feel that there are different treatments that are appropriate for their communities. There are some that they like to promote, that there are some that they are just adamantly against. And that can just be the difference of you in one city over and two cities down could have very different feelings about different safety treatments. We've come to learn that people have a lot of feelings about safety treatments. And so we want to set you up for success. And I will say this will come in both the form of the acute recommendations we make as part of this study, but also what tools we are able to provide for the public works group and the city as a whole to be responsive to needs as they come up. I will tell you, having perused the survey results that we have to date, that by and large, the comments that we've received are not concentrated, that they are distributed to a lot of different areas. People have a lot of very acute, pinpoint pieces where they are at. And so it may be part of this is for us to give tools that the public works group is then able to be responsive in the future as they see emerging needs or as things come up. So that would be part of it. So as my colleagues are passing around the engagement materials for you, we also have a list of some preliminary toolbox elements. And if we go to the next slide, this is an example of what the toolbox will look like. Ultimately, this is the toolbox we built for the city of Olathe. It will give a list of treatments that are most applicable to the city. It doesn't mean that the city can't ultimately do something that's not on this list if that is chosen for a specific location. It doesn't mean that you have to do it because it's on this list, but we also want to make sure that the list is consistent with things that you think are going to work for your community. And then there's a breakdown of just high level, what is the cost of each treatment? What's its relative efficacy? How effective is it at, dealing with the target crashes that we have? And then just like, what are the applications for it and just some background for folks who are general. So it is generally a pretty good tool that also helps the public works group communicate to the public in the future when they are using these treatments, why a treatment was selected and how it can be useful. And so again, we passed out the list. So with the next slide, we'll just sort of open it up to a discussion. If there are any treatments either that you see on the list that you experience in your life that you say, these are things that are great for mission and we're excited for them and having them here, please let us know that. If there are treatments that you've seen in other communities or have tried in this community and have not been effective, we are certainly open to that. We also realize that this is a lot to process just today. And so if you need some time to just sort of marinate on the list, certainly Stephanie has been a great liaison for us and partner on the project, and would be a great resource to just provide your feedback to either now or throughout in terms of opinion you have on that list. And I will say we did try to be thoughtful to curate the list that's in front of you, specific to the experience, that Jessica demonstrated in the analysis. So it is informed by already what we know about the safety experience in your community, and then also just the nature of the roads and thoroughfares that you have here. Cool. All right.
I want, before you leave, I would really appreciate you either sharing with Stephanie or Laura the clarification on the pinpoint with safety, because someone's going to call after they see this meeting and ask me, and I can't define it right now, what
Sure.
that means. It looks like it should be, I mean, if it's cycle related, that's pretty specific. Safety kind of is the whole thing, and I don't mean to keep repeating this, but I'd kind of like to get the clarification on what that means.
Yes. And what I think most importantly is that we need to provide a clarification on the website about how people should mark their different pieces. I will say, and I don't know if you've had time to get on there, in addition to pinning something, people have the opportunity, and by and large, in all the comments I've seen in Mission, to provide a description of why they flagged it. And so I think the concern you have may impact how we aggregate the results, but in terms of understanding what somebody's concern is at a given place, that description does allow us to understand why they flag something and what they're trying to point out about it. But yes, I think we can certainly commit to you today that within the website, we will clarify why somebody should flag any of the different flags. So yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, we can skip to the next slide. So this is a demonstration from a different SS4A project we did in a relatively similar community. So this is one of the outcomes that you'll see in terms of the discrete recommendations. So there will be a list of points that we've identified within the city that have been safety challenged or have been identified from the public in terms of things that they would like to see improved. It can come, some communities like that to be prioritized list because they want to have some direction in terms of the order of improving them. Some communities ask that they not be prioritized because you may have some other priorities and things that you're considering in terms of how to distribute the project and want a little bit more discretion in how to do those. So both of those are available to us, but it'll be a list again that will make some recommendations about the locations, the specific treatments that are proposed at those locations, and then potentially some different funding sources or ways that they could go about doing it, along with a rough planning level cost estimate for those locations.
Yeah, just real quick, this sort of harkens back to the bike and pedestrian planning that we did a year or two ago. And I understand that the scope of this project isn't to fully rehash that, but it would be interesting once we were at this kind of stage just to sort of lay those two over each other and see where we're really, from two different kind of cross sections of the data, what's screaming at us.
Yes, absolutely. And maybe if we switch to the next slide, incredible segue to the next piece we were going to talk about, which is a policy review. This is one of the required components of the SS4A, is that we look not just at the infrastructure staff, but also the policy piece. And we talk about that is maybe the easy button to safety. So it's a little bit harder for public works to go around, chasing the needs of the city. If there are things that are baked into your policy that as people come and develop in your city and have to abide that policy, then that makes that part of the safety and the infrastructure as, those places are improved. And so, just wanted to talk about some of the plans that we've already looked to incorporate and make sure that our recommendations are consistent with, the broader comprehensive plans and pieces that you have already done before. We're not here to rewrite and once you guys have already have those things, we want to build off of them, not replace them. And then we do understand that, now with the new planning hire, that there's some work there and the planning department's considering writing some new policies. And so we're working hand in hand with them to make sure that the recommendations that we have are consistent with the work that's going on for their policy development.
And I'm sure you're working on off of the latest and greatest version of the comp plan, but we did, I don't know if amend is the correct word, but amend it to add the bike ped plan and I think the Rock Creek studies to that. So you have that version, I assume,
Yeah, the Mission Connections plan, the bike.
is the bike ped plan. Okay.
Yes. And the good news is we have not actually started to integrate those pieces yet since we don't know the recommendations, but we will make sure that we do grab that piece.
Elliot?
So what I understand here is this is phase one, obviously, of where we assess everything and then come up with a plan. And then hopefully that there are dollars for the implementation. And it seems like a couple of issues that we've discussed kind of go back to maybe more police involvement with patrol.
Sure.
So I don't know how that plays into this, if there's funding for that, or if it's just more implementing like more street stuff.
No, that is a good question. So there's nothing baked into the program that requires the recommendations to focus on anything. So they will probably be a mix of hard street improvements, things that can be done to the infrastructure. They will be, I think Jessica talked on this, possibly education or things you can do even through your own social media. I know that KDOT does fund things in terms of enforcement and those sort of pieces. So we may be able to do some recommendations on that piece as well, if that's sort of borne out through the study. So yes, the recommendations may be, again, around modifications or growth in your own policy that can do that. So that the recommendations will sort of span all those different components.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Any other questions at this stage?
Perfect. And then finally, just where are we going from here? So next steps, continue to engage in many of the ways that you have recommended. We will take a lot of that into consideration in terms of stakeholders, the means that we're engaging folks. And again, continue to promote that online tool. Drew touched on the roundtable that's coming up on the 14th. We do have another meeting with our TAC group in October. And so they're really a key group for us to be a sounding board and voice for the city in terms of implementation and practicality of our results. We do tentatively plan to have our plan available in November. That will give folks time to look at the actual product of it ahead of our deadline for you to comment on any of the things you've seen in terms of the form or the results with the goal to hopefully finalize it in December.
Yeah, Leah?
And is the stakeholder roundtable open to the public as well, or just the groups that have been identified?
We're certainly not going to turn anyone away. We've only sort of advertised it, and the people who are aware of it are the groups that we've invited. And we are planning that sort of large scale public meeting in October as well to get feedback from the public in that forum. In topics like this that are not around a hard specific project, we find variable interest in the like open style public meetings. Sometimes groups want to come out. Sometimes people look at those things too amalgamously, but yeah, so we'll see.
Debbie?
Where will the August 14th roundtable be held?
Be held community studies.
Can I add something to that? If you all think that there is a stakeholder group that maybe we were missing on the slide that we had, and you think that they should be, I know someone mentioned the senior centers, for example. So if there is somebody missing, we work closely with staff to create that stakeholder list, but please do let us know or let Public Works know so that we can extend that invite to other stakeholders that may benefit from joining that.
Yeah, and we did build into our budget some capacity to have directed stakeholder engagement as well. And so we haven't figured out which groups those are yet, but I mean, still very open and obviously based on the feedback we've gotten today. Awesome.
Great. Any final questions? Anything else from your team?
No, just appreciate all the thoughtful feedback. I mean, just know that as you know, constituents reach out to you through this process. You know, Stephanie has been a continuous conduit to us. We have regular meetings, and so if there is feedback that you all have, please provide it to her, and I'm sure she'll funnel it to us. And you know, we are open to everyone's thoughts throughout this process, trying to get as much engagement as we can. So just really appreciate it. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Anything? Oh yeah, Wanda?
I guess I just have, just thinking about it, that those people over there on Lamar, oh, that's not part of the project, right? I would think that though that
What people?
the apartments on Lamar. Those people do a lot of walking. So that might be some stakeholders that you might want to talk to.
Lamar and what?
Or which apartments?
Not Johnson Drive, 51st.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The retreat.
Retreat, yeah.
The cluster.
Yeah, the cluster up off Fox Ridge.
The
Yeah.
retreat, but that whole area. is
Yeah, on Fox
all-
Ridge, that
yeah,
corridor.
Yeah. That's,
Sure.
And there may be some opportunity. I think we have some connections with some of the managers in those apartment complexes that we could maybe push some information out for
Yeah, that'd be good.
residents.
Yeah, this is a big priority for us, so thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Well, glad to help.
Brian, did you want to comment at all about kind of the plan for, it's a little bit premature, but the complete streets discussion that we're thinking about?
There's a lot of us who probably don't really know what complete streets means. And there's a few of us that have kind of a vague understanding of it. But there's one of us who really is very familiar with it, and that's our new planner, Taylor Cunningham. She developed a complete streets program for her previous city, Joplin, Missouri. So that was something kind of rang bells for us when we saw her resume and we're interviewing her. So we're starting to work with her on developing a presentation they'll give to you all sometime later this, late September, late summer, early fall, September, I think is what we targeted at a work session where we'll just kind of conceptually go over what complete street plan looks like, what are some of the components of a policy, kind of get some initial feedback from you all, what you would like to see in that, and then start working towards kind of developing a complete streets policy for the community.
So the thought being also, I mean, that was an implementation strategy in the comprehensive plan. So following up on that, but then also I think there may be some elements as we hear your feedback that dovetail with the timing of the particularly the toolbox, toolbox measures and things like that, so that we can inform as we move towards a final report, maybe some of those pieces.
Great. Stephanie, do you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to close out, and I know Maggie was taking notes for us, but I also was too. And so some of the things that I heard from you was getting the word out. I will coordinate with Penn to leave some flyers at the community center. Maybe we can make some boards too. I know we have a few that we've been using for our community outreach, so maybe that's something we can duplicate to leave there. I don't think it can hurt either. You all have a copy of them, so when you're out and about, I think if that's something you want to talk to businesses or your constituents about, feel free to pass out those flyers as well. And then, maybe we can hit the ground, some staff, and pass them out along businesses along Johnson Drive that are frequented by our community members. So, but we do have one more pop-up event. Again, that's tomorrow night. So I will be with Burns and McDonald staff again on a cool 70s evening out there. And then we all have our community meeting coming up soon. Feel free to email me if things pop into your head and you have suggestions. If you hear from people, we've been directing a lot of people as well to the Pinpoint website. Also, I know we have 127 pins. One of the options that's in that map is to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down, which I think gives a little bit more interaction too. So if you see something in there that you're like, oh, that's a great idea, you can give it a thumbs up. And you're recording that all, so we'll get a kind of analysis of all the feedback. So we'll get all of that too. So just wanted to thank you for your time and for your feedback, and thank the Burns and McDonald staff. They've been great to work with, and the analysis has been fun to see as well. So, and again, email me if you have any questions.
I think, and I'm just sitting here thinking of it, but we also have National Night Out next Tuesday.
Yeah, that'd be
evening,
great.
And it might be a
opportunity.
great opportunity to make at least some of the flyers or QR codes available
Yeah.
if we have similar turnout as we did last year.
Or if we have any sort of more kid accessible way to give responses, right? Because there's gonna be a lot of kids at that, which would be a user group that might also otherwise be hard to get. I know that's short notice to try to think of something, some way to engage them, but that might be interesting too. Like, even if it's like, where are your favorite spots to walk, you know, sort of the inverse of where do you like to bike or where do you like to walk, to know like areas that work well, you know, in the city. That could maybe be a fun little activity for them.
Yeah, we do have a lot of kids that walk to school, it seems.
Yeah,
Which is awesome.
yeah, which on the plans, I don't know if you have all of our safe routes to school information from staff, probably, but yeah. Those might be, you know, areas for that priority list, areas to focus on as well. Right, any final questions or comments? Yeah, Leah?
So are we incorporating sidewalks into some of this as well? Just,
So yes, all modes of transportation are included. So any pedestrian facilities, bicycle facilities. TBD in terms of like whether it makes sense for us to make discrete like if there is truly a specific sidewalk or sidewalk gap that gets called out, there may be that. Sidewalks are often something that we provide tools to the public works group to address systemically or to look at systemically in terms of their value and improvement. So, and it can be, there are certainly plans in the past that have had recommendations to do a comprehensive sidewalk review and stuff like that.
yeah, because our sidewalks are spotty at best in terms of where they are. And especially because we do have so many children that walk to school. And I know that we have focused on improving the sidewalks we currently have before building new ones, but it's maybe time to start thinking about additional sidewalks from a safety perspective. And especially if there's maybe some funds that could help us with that, that would be fantastic.
Perfect. Right, any final closing thoughts? Thank you so much to your team and staff for all the hard work on this, and that will conclude our work session tonight. Thanks.
Thank you.